doing cardio or weights and just like having yellow stains and shit in my clothes. It turned my semen yellow, so I was literally busting yellow. What's up everyone, Caidin from btbtraining.net, and today I wanted to make a video talking about my personal experience with DNP. So what is DNP? DNP is short for dinitrophenol or dinitrophenol. I've heard it pronounced both ways, but what DNP essentially is it's widely considered to be the most effective fat loss supplement, but it is also considered to be the most dangerous fat loss substance on the planet. So I have some personal experience with using this drug, and that's what I wanted to kind of talk about today. I don't want to turn this into an educational video about DNP, but I do very quickly want to kind of sum up how DNP works so that you guys can kind of understand what makes this drug so effective, but at the same time also makes this drug so dangerous. So the long and short of how DNP works is all living creatures utilize an energy source that's known as ATP, and ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. If you guys have taken a high school biology course, I'm sure you've heard the acronym ATP before. So how does DNP work? So there are many things that our body uses to create ATP. They use food energy, they use electrons, protons, neutrons, all those types of things. Basically, the way that DNP works is it prevents protons from joining with the other substances that the body needs to make ATP. So the body cannot create as much ATP with DNP in its system as it could if it didn't have DNP in its system. So why is this a problem? When the body goes to make ATP and there is DNP present in the system, DNP prevents protons from attaching to the other materials that the body needs in order to create ATP. This does two things that are really important to remember. One, it creates an ATP deficit. So your body needs ATP to do things, and your body is now at a deficit because the DNP is not allowing the protons to be used to create ATP. And second, which is very important to remember, is that all of those other materials, so the food energy, the electrons, the neutrons, all of those other things, because they don't have protons, they cannot be turned into ATP. So your body has to do something with those. Your body wants to turn them into ATP, but the DNP does not allow the protons to join with those substances to create ATP. So your body has to do something with all of those other things. And what it typically does is it burns them off as heat. So with those two things in mind, we're really starting to paint a picture at how DNP can be so effective, but at the same time, it can also be so dangerous. The way that DNP is an extremely effective fat loss supplement is because the body is at an ATP deficit, it needs to use other forms of energy to fuel what ATP would normally be fueling for you. And so in order to do that, it increases your body's metabolic rate and it allows more fat, body fat, to be oxidized as energy. Now that is why it's an extremely effective fat loss supplement, because it causes your body to use so much more fat for fuel than what it normally would. At the same token, the same thing that makes this supplement very effective for fat loss is the same reason why it's extremely dangerous. And the fact that the more DNP that you take, the larger the ATP deficit you're creating, which means the more heat that your body is dissipating. The more heat that your body is dissipating, you're obviously raising your body's internal temperature. And what they are finding with the people that are dying from DNP when they're performing autopsies on the bodies is that their internal organs are literally cooked from the inside out. So that is extremely important to remember when you take this supplement. There are 3 drugs in the bodybuilding scope that have the potential to kill you instantly: insulin, diuretics, and DNP. These 3 drugs, if you take them, they will kill you within a matter of hours, period. And this drug, as I just mentioned, is on that list. This drug is extremely dangerous. What's really interesting about DNP is that DNP is not even a substance that's made for human consumption. DNP is a chemical that is found in pesticides, fungicides, it's found in paint, it's found in explosives like dynamite. So this is not something, I want to reiterate this is not something that is made for human consumption. This is made for outside purposes that humans happen to be ingesting because it happens to have some fat loss properties to it. So now that I have gotten that out of the way, I wanted to take some time to talk about my personal experience with DNP, and I want to give a quick backstory so that you guys can kind of understand the mindset that I was going through when I was using DNP. So I have basically spent my entire life up until the past 5 years as a pretty overweight individual. I remember easily being the heaviest kid in my grade school, and then when I went on to middle school and high school, I was definitely up there. I've never been a skinny guy. I've always been a pretty obese guy. I graduated from high school in 2014, and I took the first year or so after high school where I was just kind of playing video games and partying and doing all that kind of shit, and I put on even more weight. So I was a bigger guy always my entire life, and then I put on even more weight after high school ended. Around 2016, I underwent a weight loss journey, transformation, I guess that's what you could say. I started at like 260 pounds, and then over the course of a year and a half, I remember weighing as low as 152 pounds. So over a 100-pound weight loss in, we'll say, a year and a half. I took some breaks in between there. And it's important that you understand that part about me, because I think it really paints the picture of the mindset that I was in at that time. So I was 260 pounds, and by the time the end of 2016 had come, I was, let's say, 180 or something along those lines. I had obviously lost 80 pounds. I had lost a ton of weight. I was getting a ton of compliments from a lot of people. But for the first time in my life, I was really dealing with some like self-image issues. What's really interesting is that when I was fat my entire life, it really was never something that bothered me that much. I wasn't driven to lose weight because of like a self-hatred for the person that I was. I just knew that I needed to make a change and I wanted to be healthier. So that's how I kind of underwent my weight loss journey. As I got towards the end of that first year, where I was weighing like roughly 180 pounds, I kind of started to get a little greedy, and I was starting to have some kind of like body image issues. I no longer wanted to be the guy who had gone from like 260 pounds to like 180 pounds and was really, healthy and in a good spot hormonally and all of those types of things. I wanted to be the guy who went from like 260 pounds to the guy with like shredded fucking six-pack, like veins in my abs and all of that shit. Like I wanted to be inside out shredded. I wanted to do the complete opposite of what I had been my entire life, and I wanted to go from being a fat chubby kid to being a shredded aesthetic looking guy. So at that point I was religiously tracking my nutrition and everything. I was religiously training and doing cardio, but I was also really interested in researching supplements that I could add to my diet and training regime to help speed up the fat loss, because again, I wanted to be shredded. That's when I learned about DNP, and this was in 2017. So obviously we're in 2021 now, so that was 4 years ago, and a lot of research and stuff has come out on DNP since that time, but at the time, there was still a decent amount of information out there on DNP. So at the time, I thought that I was making an informed decision on taking this drug, because again, I was super strict on my nutrition and super strict on my training, and I was looking for something to give me the extra edge. So through a variety of means, I ended up acquiring some DNP, and I ended up running DNP at about 200 milligrams per day for about 3.5 to 4 weeks straight in the spring/summer of 2017. Let's talk about the side effects that I experienced when I was using DNP. So I experienced quite a few side effects from DNP, actually. The first one being the lethargy and just the overall feeling of exhaustion was absolutely, at times, pretty overwhelming. I remember at that time, I was going to school and I was also working at Menards. I was working at a hardware store. And when I would have to take my lunch break, I would have to climb like 12 steps to go up to the break room. And I remember those 12 steps when I was on DNP was like a mountain. Like, my legs were so heavy and I was so tired all the time that just the thought of climbing steps was extremely difficult to do. You can imagine if I felt that tired and that exhausted when I was at work. I was able to do cardio sessions with like a decent output, but going into the gym in the afternoon and training with weights was basically a fucking lost cause. My strength decreased considerably when I was taking DNP because I was just so tired and so lethargic. I wasn't able to get good workouts for a month. Basically, it turned all of my bodily fluids yellow. My sweat turned yellow. I remember a couple times I was wearing white shirts or like gray boxers or gray, whatever. And I remember coming home from the gym from doing cardio or weights and just like having yellow stains and shit in my clothes. It turned my semen yellow. So I was literally busting yellow. My pee was a dark yellow. Just really, it did some pretty nasty things to my insides. I can assume if it was turning all my body fluids a bright yellow color, it probably was not doing too many good things inside of my body. One of the things that I actually didn't experience on DNP was it had kind of been thrown around there on the internet at that point that when you take DNP, you should run a lower carbohydrate diet because the carbohydrates produce more heat in the body. And this drug is already producing a ton of heat inside your body. So by keeping the carbs down, you're hopefully trying to mitigate that side effect. But I was also going through some eating disorders at the time, and I would occasionally binge eat, which is another video for a different day that I want to talk about, is my history with binge eating disorder. But the times that I did binge eat while I was on DNP, because that was something that happened. While I was on DNP, I would be binge eating cereal and cookies and donuts and ice cream and just fucking garbage. Tons of carbohydrates. And I knew at the time that I probably shouldn't be eating carbohydrates because they could potentially kill me with this drug in my system, but I was doing it anyways. I can't say that I really felt a difference in the heat in my body between eating a higher carbohydrate diet and a lower carbohydrate diet, but I did just feel a general sense of increased body temperature and sweating pretty much for an entire month straight. I didn't notice much of a difference between the foods that I ate, but I did just notice in general that overall I was extremely hot. I was sweating more than normal. When I was sweating this neon fucking yellow nasty shit. And there was just a lot of sides, and it was a pretty nasty drug, and I was running 200 milligrams, which is, if you search on the internet, it's kind of discussed within the dark circles of bodybuilding that 200 milligrams is a pretty low to safe dose. Obviously, it depends who you ask on that. I know people who have taken less, and I know people who have taken more. But I personally just ran 200 milligrams. Results. So let's talk about the results. Did I get leaner with using DNP? I absolutely did get leaner while using DNP. This is 4 years ago at this point. I don't remember any hard numbers. I can't say I lost like 12 pounds of fat in a month or something like that. I don't remember what the numbers were. But I do remember looking back at some pictures of before and after when I started taking the DNP and realizing that I had gotten leaner. Now the question is, was getting leaner worth the side effects that I went through, and did I get so much leaner that I would warrant taking the drug again. So I'm gonna be 100% honest with you guys here. If you're asking me today, would I run DNP again and was it worth it? I don't know if I would necessarily say it was worth it for me, especially at that time. I could have done the exact same thing in the same amount of time without taking DNP if I had just been a little bit more patient and monitored my food and my energy expenditure a little bit better. I think I could have lost the same amount of fat. It may have taken a little bit longer, but I still could have accomplished the same thing. Would I run it again in the future? I honestly don't know how to answer that question. I don't think that I would like to run it again, but if I was put in the position where, say, I was, prepping for a show and I felt that it was the only way that I could kind of get ready is if I used a low dose of DNP, I don't know, I may decide to just drop out of the show and do a different one, or if I was, dead set on doing that show, I honestly may consider running another low dose again. There's been some research that's come out in the past couple of years that suggested that DNP is carcinogenic and potentially could cause cancer. So I really would be hard pressed to have to use the drug now, but I also think that I would be lying if I said that I wouldn't potentially use it again if the situation called for it. So I just wanted to share with you guys my personal experience with DNP. Again, I put a disclaimer at the beginning of the video. I am not encouraging anybody at all to use this drug. I don't encourage anybody to use drugs of any kind at all, but especially this drug. This drug will, not may, it will kill you if you take it the wrong way, period. And the way that the drug is, its half-life is so long that if you were to take a lethal dose of it and you were to go to the doctor, there's nothing that they can do for you. You basically cook yourself from the inside out. So I cannot, with a good heart, recommend any drug, but especially DNP. If you guys have any questions about my personal experience with DNP, please leave a comment, send me a message, and I'll be happy to get back to you. Again, guys, I don't think this is something that you should take. I do not recommend it, but it is something that I have taken, and I wanted to share my personal experience with you in case there's anybody out there who's contemplating using it. I potentially want to steer you away from using it. So, as always, guys, take care of yourselves.